We've seen a massive market reaction this morning. The ruble is crumbling. The MySec stock exchange in Russia under pressure. Capital flight is taking place. To what extent is that going to influence the way that President Putin thinks about the situation in front of him?
Well, first of all, he is a tactician and he thinks in a very tactical sense. He thinks that that is temporary reaction and that will be settled down as soon as the West will realize that it cannot do anything, as soon as Russia will take control of Crimea, and Putin believes that it will be okay with the West.
So your assumption is that that is what he's going for? He wants control of Crimea?
He wants control of Crimea due to at least two, maybe three reasons. The first one is that he tries to replicate the situation with Transnistria in Moldova, South Ossetia and Abkhazia in Georgia. He needs a sort of spot of instability to have a leverage upon the new Kiev government.
Yeah.
He needs that. Secondly, there is geopolitical need. The point is that due to geographical reasons, Novorossiysk just cannot substitute Sevastopol as the naval base for Russian Black Sea Fleet.
Yeah.
And if Russia will lose Sevastopol, it will effectively lose the possibility, the chance to influence the situation in the whole Black Sea region, which is unacceptable for Russia as the nation. It's not about Putin, only Putin or the current Kremlin at all. It was the base for Russian Black Sea Fleet over 220 years.
How can the West leverage its agenda here? What is the point of pain for Putin if the foreign ministers meeting in Brussels today were to do one thing to change Putin's course? How could they achieve it?
The problem is that it's extremely difficult, if possible at all, to force him to change his course rapidly. He will not react. He is a sort of, tank going forward, and
yeah.
he does not think next step before he finishes the first step. So now he will continue this policy, hoping that the West will not react and will swallow what has happened. So I would be very, very pessimistic about the prospects to change his policy right now.
Who does he listen to?
First of all, he listens to his team, the collective Putin, which
right.
rules Russia.
So could they be targeted?
They might be targeted. They might be targeted if something like Magnitsky Act will be extended to include the inner circle of this collective Putin. Putin will become the very serious liability for this team, and he might be forced to change the policy.
And the likelihood of that happening, if you were forming policy, that would be the point of maximum leverage, do you think?
It seems to me that that might be the most sensitive and most painful thing for Vladimir Putin, and that will be the clear violation of Vladimir Putin's contract, a sort of social contract with this small team of oligarchs and rulers of Russia. He does not deliver because his contract is to defend their interests. If they do not have chance to land here in their property in London or somewhere else, that is certainly the very serious reason for them to think.
It'd be interesting to see what the read across is into the London housing market as a result of this. Let's talk a little bit about Europe's exposure to Russia and how much that's going to hamstring foreign policy. We rely on a third of our gas supplies coming from Russia. Some of that can be substituted. Belarus can bring more supplies in, but nevertheless, to what extent is that going to limit the options that are available?
Well, first of all, Russia, as far as I remember, 51% of Russian state budget comes from revenues, oil and gas revenues.
Yeah.
No less than 20% of Russian state budget comes from gas sold to Europe. It seems so. The point is that Vladimir Putin's psychology is the psychology of the person who grew up in a sort of court gangs in Leningrad, and so he knows that it's necessary to fight without any limits, actually fighting without any rules, and only after that, after end of that, you will think over. He is prepared to take much higher losses now, but in the longer term, he will probably suffer more than the West. Because once, as far as I remember, it was Angela Merkel who said 7 years ago, when Putin tried to use this gas weapon, he said, do not forget who sells you gas. Angela Merkel's reply was, do not forget who buys your gas.
Yep, a fair point to make, I would have thought, and one that she'll be probably making quite forcefully. Another pressure point that seems to stand out potentially to use against Putin, and here is a man of significant ego, I guess you could probably say. Maybe that's not looking at it quite correctly, but nevertheless, If he was removed from the G8, how much of a personal blow would that be to him?
That will be extremely sensitive, personal blow to Vladimir Putin, because he values that a lot. He values these publications by Forbes to be the most influential man. He values that a lot, but that influences his personal ego, which, as a matter of fact, in these current highly personalized Russian foreign policy might play some role. But once again, that will not play rapidly. The point is that I do not see what, except extremely forceful actions, might stop him right now. So that is a sort of postponed influence upon his decision. He will not stop upon, especially keeping in mind that it's announced suspended talks. It's not expulsion, just suspended. And he does believe that the West will have to swallow, as it has swallowed Georgia, for instance.
Yeah.
That is his calculation.